Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Kaufman, and welcome to our virtual interview for Howell Hub / Rebel Recap. Today, we're joined by a very special guest from all the way across the coast, students broadcaster at the University of Southern California. He's been broadcasting games at the high school level since 2016, but recently kicked it up a notch as he's now calling games for the Pac-12 network, plus for the University of Southern California as the sports director on campus radio station KXSC. And in the summer of 2022, he was also named the first team All-American, named as one of the top 6 collegiate broadcasters in the country by Sports Broadcasting Talent Agency of America. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our guest, Carlo Jimenez.
Thanks so much for
Carlos, how
having
we
me.
doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Absolutely.
I'm doing good. I'm excited to be on.
All right, well, Carlos, we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of your career and how it started, where you are now, and what really the reason you chose to be a broadcaster. First, let's start with why did you choose to be a sports broadcaster?
That's a good question. I think for me, I always loved sports, grew up around sports, and I knew I couldn't play basketball in high school. So I wanted to be around the game somehow. And my freshman year, I joined a club for student radio, and they had opportunities to like call games and like broadcast games. And that's like I remember after like a JV game where I didn't really play on JV. I would ride the bench, and I like tried it and called the game, and I had so much fun. And it was like I don't know. I really loved, like, I felt like I was there and like describing the action. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll keep doing this more, and just more and more kind of, fell in love with it and really enjoyed getting to meet people through it, and met some really, really cool mentors who've been able to help me. But yeah, I think, like most of us who are broadcasters, just wanting to stay around sports more is why I started doing it.
Now, you mentioned, you weren't playing basketball or wasn't starting for basketball. That's how you kind of got into your career. How long have you known from that point that you wanted to be a sports broadcaster?
That's a good question. I didn't even know it existed as like a career, to be honest, until my sophomore year in high school. And I kind of did it as a hobby for a while, just kind of do it for fun. And then I met this guy. His name is Jack Benjamin, and he works for Nicholls State calling their games. And Jack kind of like, took me under his wing and helped show me like, this is how you correctly call a game. Like, this is how you're supposed to say this and that. And he like helped me figure out, like, learn the ropes. And I think I kind of fell in love with broadcasting then because I really liked the process. For me, like, I was never like the smartest person in the room. But I kind of like, if there was a roadmap to get somewhere and it was very clearly laid out, that worked for me. And like broadcasting is like, you just call the game, you listen back, you try to improve, you prep, you call the next game. And that made sense to me, and kind of worked with like what I did in high school sports wise, like just go to practice, extra practice, weight room. So I think he was like monumental in helping me, show me the roadmap for broadcasting. That's when I like fell in love with the process and also broadcasting.
Now, I know a lot of people, as you mentioned, you said you practice playing sports. A lot of people practice the sport that they're playing. Do you kind of find a way that you could practice being a sports broadcaster? Is not much such of a thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you definitely can. One thing that I used to do during COVID when, everything was, or during peak COVID when everything was shut down is, you'd bring up an old NBA game, and sometimes I even like prepare for the game as if I'm calling it, make like my spotting sheets, and then call the game and listen back. In the summers, I'll often, before baseball season, like call baseball games off YouTube and like score it and record it and listen back to it. So yeah, I mean, I think definitely there's ways you can go to games and just sit in the stands and call it. Like, you don't have to be credentialed or like have a spot. I think, you just sit in the stands of a baseball game, phone to mouth, and call the game. So I think definitely you can definitely practice. Obviously it's not as there's no like dribbling drills I can do for broadcasting or like shooting drills, but you can do it.
Now, you mentioned COVID. Was COVID kind of, I guess, in a way, a more difficult situation for you being a sports broadcaster? Obviously, it was difficult for everyone, but being a sports broadcaster, did that have more of an effect on you to where you are and where you were at that point of being in the college level of broadcasting?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely had an effect. I think, though, I was extremely lucky and really, really, yeah, really blessed with the opportunities I had at USC. Because we shut down in March, and then I actually had a job with a team called the Portland Pickles out in Portland, Oregon. And the Pickles decided during COVID that they wanted to still play baseball. And so I like my internship I got in November. Like this is pre shutdown pandemic. And somehow I ended up with one of the teams that was like, no, we're going to play. So we played in Aurora, Oregon, which is like 30 minutes from Portland. It is literally known as one of the turf capitals of the world. So like grass, like turf grass, like that is what it's known for. So you were just in fields of grass, which was awful for my allergies. But we played at this stadium like in the middle of nowhere with just local people from the area. So I got to do that. And then also USC was really accommodating. And shout out Tim Tessalone, who and Katie Ryan, who run this football sports information program there. They let me broadcast all the home games on the radio. Dave Tuttle, who works for USC as our basketball, and Darcy Couch let me broadcast all the basketball games. Jacob Reams, who does our baseball, let me broadcast all the baseball games. And then I also got to work with the athletics department, calling some basketball and baseball here and there. And a big shout out to Rich Rodriguez for letting me do that. So yeah, those people really helped me at USC kind of still have opportunities, even though all my classes were online, right? So I'd go to class online and then walk to campus where it was literally me and whoever's playing in that game and like the production crew. And other than that, it was a ghost town. But it was cool. It was cool.
Now, you mentioned doing the games at different sports. Is there a certain sport that you would, I guess you could say, pick over other sports, or do you love doing them all?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like sometimes I'm in the middle of baseball and I'm like, I love baseball. I'm in the middle of basketball and football. But I think one that I enjoy the most is probably basketball. And I think it's because I grew up playing basketball. I still play here at USC. So I can kind of anticipate and kind of understand what's going on, right? Like I have no idea what defense is lining up in football, whether it's zone, man, cover 3, cover 2. Like I have no idea. I have no idea what pitchers are trying to do against hitters in at bats. Like I don't know whether he's going to work backwards, whether he's going to try, what's part of the zone he's trying to work. But in basketball, I kind of have an understanding of strategy. Not very well. It's super minuscule, but it's more than the other sports. So I feel like that one's probably my favorite.
Now, you mentioned earlier, you said doing basketball games and you got the opportunity. You were also doing the Pac-12 championship game earlier this month, and that was a really, I'm going to guess, cool moment for you because that was a game between Arizona and UCLA, which are ranked 1 and 2. What was that experience like to be there doing that kind of game in those high stakes, but two of the best teams in the nation?
Yeah. I mean, the Pac-12 was great. They let student broadcasters and student media hang around for the whole tournament, even though your team might be eliminated. So we had that chance, which was really, really cool. And yeah, it was fun because we had other broadcasters there. So we had covered all 10 games before that. And then you get the 11th game and you get 2 top 10 teams and you get a rematch of last year. And within the first 4 minutes, I just remember looking at my friends who were there and being like, whoa, like this is a different level of basketball. Like that we are like Amari Bailey, I don't know if you saw it, had a dunk that got taken away that probably shouldn't have got taken away. And then literally the next possession, like Pele Larson posters somebody else. It was really cool. Like it was one of those games where you can feel the intensity in the arena. And it was a whole lot of fun. And to have a potential game-winning shot, I mean, there's really nothing more you can ask for in a basketball game. So it was fun.
Now, speaking of intensity, a lot of athletes, I know me personally, other athletes, NFL, MLB, whatever sport it is, they feed off the energy, especially as a home team. Do you kind of do that as well as a broadcaster?
I think you do a little bit. I think you have to be cautious of like living and dying with every play. I've definitely had my moments this year where like I know it's a big game for USC, and I can feel myself kind of getting too much into the game with the results wise versus like just calling it. But yeah, when you have a big crowd, I mean, there's nothing better. It definitely raises. I mean, it for sure raises your level of. You know, I don't want to say focus, but you have to be more focused when there's so many people in the building because there's so much going on. So a little bit, I'd say, a little bit.
Now, I know you're obviously a student at USC. How is it is it difficult for you to put aside your emotions if, let's say, USC hits a buzzer beater compared to if the other team were to hit the buzzer beater? How do you kind of separate those two as being a broadcaster?
Yeah, that's a good question. I try to not care about the result, but if you listen to the buzzer beaters I've called for USC, it's I definitely care. I think for me, just trying to be as excited for both. So I would hope that like a 3 for Stanford has the same energy as a 3 for USC in a game. Because I mean, honestly, like I don't know how many people are listening to my broadcast, and I want to make sure that I have great energy if above anything else. And so I try to just be as excited for both as I can be. So yeah, I mean, it's tough at times, but sometimes I find myself getting a little too excited for, a Washington State home run when USC just hit a home run and I didn't get as excited. So it's a balance for sure.
Does the energy kind of feed off from each other? Like, especially a game like, their teams going back and forth. It's taking them the Arizona UCLA game. If they're going back and forth, does the energy like one guy hits a big three, the next guy hits a three, then a poster down? Does the energy kind of feed off from each other? Or at certain points in the game, you're like, all right, this is going to be a big spot. You have that feeling. Is that where it goes? Where do you kind of see the energy coming from in your broadcasts?
Yeah, I think it's definitely when it comes to basketball, it is for sure on the pace of the game and like you said, how many made shots. Like if the last 4 shots Arizona and UCLA have taken, they've made like this is fun, right? Like the crowd's getting into every make and you're feeling that energy. And so like for me as a radio person, like you want to relay the feeling is like in the building to the person at home. So yeah, I think it's like I try to have the same emotion that's in the arena, and when teams are going back and forth and it's blow for blow, it's a great time to get into it, and it's also a great time, especially if you're on the radio and TV, to kind of let it breathe for a second, so the people at home can like hear the fans and they can hear the crowd. Because as much as I love to talk, sometimes that stuff is even better than me talking. Oftentimes it is better than me talking.
Now, I know you just said the TV and radio side of things. Is it for you, obviously, TV, you're descriptive, but you don't have to be as descriptive because your viewers are seeing what is going on compared to the radio where they're completely blinded to the fact, but they just hear your voice. How do you kind of separate those two in a sense of being on a radio broadcast compared to being on a television broadcast?
Yeah, the way I've been taught it is on TV, you're providing context, right? So, like, the viewer at home can see the picture. They can see that the Warriors have an 8-point lead, but maybe as a TV broadcaster, it's your job to say, this is the largest lead of the night, right? They can see that Steph Curry hits a 3, and maybe you can say he has 30. Versus radio, you're right. Like, your audience is blind, so you have to describe everything, which I think is one of my favorite parts about it, because like I mean I've just started, I don't know too much, but the joy of trying to paint this picture that's moving that as my audience can't see, there's nothing more fun than that. So you're describing like every dribble, like the tattoos on somebody's arm, the headband they're wearing, the leg sleeves, versus with TV you're laying back a lot more. It's a lot more like, oh, that's Klay Thompson's 4th 3 of the night, stuff like that.
Now, what was your kind of reaction when you were told that you would have the opportunity to be able to go and broadcast the Pac-12 championship? Did you like do a did you call your family right away? What was the first thing that you did once you were given the news to be able to call the Big 12 championship?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty excited. I know I wished USC was in it, but I mean, whenever you get that credential email from the Pac-12 that says like, "Oh, you're good to go," and you check the box that says every game, like, that's I don't know when I'll ever get to broadcast a championship in a Power Five conference of basketball. Like, I don't know if that's ever going to happen for me again. So to be able to do it in college and to be able to have that opportunity given to me by the conference, like I'm forever grateful to be able to do that. Like we got to do it for football as well. And it's just an opportunity I'll never ever forget and something that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. So yeah, I don't know. In the moment, I was excited to get that email, but then when you see the confetti go up and Arizona's cutting the nets down, you're like, wow, like I'm here, and you just never know when you're going to be back.
Now, for you, we've seen obviously if you follow Carlo on TikTok and Instagram, we've definitely seen times where you've mentioned you got 5 games in a week or you've got 6 games over the span of a few days. What is that mindset for you? Are you kind of like, oh no, I got to get everything done at once? What kind of your progression? What's your progression, I guess you could say, heading into those games, knowing that you have a bunch of games coming up between either whatever sport, if it's baseball, football, bat, whatever it is?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's just you have to prepare a week ahead almost, or like 4 or 5 days ahead. So if I know I have lacrosse on Friday, I want to make sure I get my preparation done on Wednesday, memorize the teams on Wednesday, review Thursday, call the game Friday. So I'm always trying to be like 2 days ahead of schedule. So, which is not always the case. You can't always have that be the case when you're calling so many games in a day, especially if you have like 2 basketball games in a weekend. Like you can't prepare for a team that still has a game to play or you can, but not as much as you could if their next game is the game you're calling. So it's tricky, but I think it's just a lot of planning. And then one thing that's nice is here at USC, we kind of split the load between the broadcasters here. If you're calling the same game as somebody else, um, so that's really really helpful, and I'm really happy to have great friends who will do that with me, and people I can trust to prepare for a game. But yeah, it's just planning. I mean, like Monday and Tuesday are your big days. Even during football season, when I only have one game, I always try to get the boards done as early as possible because then you can kind of read the article, add a little note, and as you're reading stuff throughout the week, or maybe watching the team throughout the week, you have all these guys in your head. So I think like especially it's hard to do that in like in high school sports when I'm covering high school sports, but for college stuff, especially at USC, there's so much media coverage that I like to get it done early. So then I feel like come Saturday, you have a really good grasp of everything.
Now, when you go into, let's say you have a football game on Saturday, right? You're doing USC, they're playing whoever. Are you kind of watching the team that they play the previous week just so that you get a little more background information? Are you looking kind of like, obviously, every sport they go through the film? Do you kind of do the same in a way as a broadcaster? Like, okay, maybe even if you just watch the highlights, this team does this a certain way. Is that kind of your preparation in a way, besides the on paper stuff? Is that a way that you kind of prepare mentally for the games?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because like you said, like I think during football you have to identify who's who, and you're not always going to be able to see a number. And so body types is a huge thing for me. So like, maybe this guy wears a leg sleeve on his left leg and the other wide receiver doesn't. They might be both 6'3", but if I know I see a leg sleeve, I know who I'm talking about, right? Or this guy's a little more built, he's a little more wider. They use this running back in these formations. So yeah, you want to kind of familiarize yourself, I'd say, more with like what a player looks like without a number than like just trying to find a number. That's always helped me. And it's hard with football, but like for something like basketball, it's super easy because you can like these guys aren't wearing pads and a helmet, so I think that's the easiest way to kind of memorize is always watching YouTube highlights. I love YouTube for the highlights.
Now, for you, obviously, you've been in the mindset of a sports broadcaster. Now, I'm going to be honest, one of my favorite calls of yours is the Caleb Williams run last year in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah. What was that moment like for you being at USC and able to call that exact play, but also such a great game between those two teams?
Yeah, that was amazing. I remember when USC hired Lincoln Riley, I was like, thank Lord, because I mean, we were 4-8 the year before, and it was tough because you'd get to like the second quarter with 4 minutes to go, and you'd be down like 4 touchdowns. And so I kind of learned how to call games that way. And then Lincoln comes and Caleb comes, and now you're on the other side of that, which is also hard, but a lot easier than being on the losing side. So, man, like this football season was such a blessing to be able to watch a Heisman Trophy winner, and to be able to cover a team that was a game away from the college football playoff. Like I couldn't have dreamed of these things after the way last year finished when we lost at Cal by like 3 scores, and it was the first time we lost at Cal in like 12 years. So, yeah, I mean, I was stoked. I've been really, really blessed with the opportunities I've gotten here and how good the teams have been. Like I've been able to cover some really good USC teams.
Now, going into like, besides the preparation, besides calling the game, do you kind of build relationships with the players and the coaches as they kind of progress through the season? Do you not really like talk to them? What's kind of like your relationship with the players, the coaches, and the teams really as you're doing games?
Yeah, I think it depends on the sport. So like here at USC, I wouldn't say I have like great relationships with the players. Like we see each other a lot. They know my face. But I'm not I don't usually go to like interview. I'll go to interviews, but I rarely ask questions. I just like to like kind of see what other people are asking. So my face is there. Um, but yeah, I don't know if we like I don't really know those guys. But when you do like summer baseball, so the last couple of summers I've done summer baseball, you're spending like 8 hours with these guys every single day. So you do kind of build relationships with them. And you see them on team buses, and you see them at stadiums on away games, on off days. You'll see them around town. So I wouldn't say here at USC, but when I do call summer baseball, like then you kind of build that repertoire with guys because you're just hanging around the batting cages, talking to them, all that stuff.
Do you ever like want to just jump in the batting cages, take a few swings, show them what you got a little bit?
Man, no, absolutely not. Only because I've never played baseball, so I would embarrass myself. I will say I do like throwing long toss. Like I used to do that with the other interns before games, back in Portland. But I will when it comes to basketball, sometimes I'm like, man, I'm itching to shoot right now, or like itching to dribble around. But yeah, I mean, definitely jealous that I'm not that skilled.
Now, can you take us through a typical day, not being a broadcaster, just being a college student at USC? What is the day like for you?
Yeah, sure, we can do today. So I woke up at 8:30. I had class from 9 to 9:50. Then I worked out, and then I went to class from 12:30 to about 1:40. I'm working on my journalism final reporting project, so I went and filmed something for that at our basketball arena, and now I'm here doing this interview with you. After this, I'm going to try to edit that footage, hopefully get some sort of draft done. And Tuesdays are pretty light for me. I don't have much after, so I'm just trying to like catch up on work all the way until tonight. That's a regular day. I think usually most USC students have 2 to 3 classes in a day, so it's really not that busy. Like I remember coming from high school and being like, wow, like I have free time at 11:30 on a Tuesday. Like you never have that. You know what I mean? Like so.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Pretty nice. A lot of free time to do a lot of things outside of school, which is fun.
Now, we just went through your typical day, like without being a broadcaster. Now, take us what it's like to be in a broadcaster's shoes. What is your day like, and could it be like super hectic at times? What is your typical day calling any sport, whatever you decide to pick?
Yeah, it definitely can be busy. Um, so let's see, like last Wednesday, I had a baseball game. So I woke up, I went to class, and then I have class back to back. So I had a class from like 10 to 10:50, and then a class from 11 to 1:30. And then I worked out, and then I went home, and I had about an hour, and then I get to baseball at 4:30 for like 6:30 first pitch. So it definitely can get busy. It definitely, I mean, those days are long, especially when you have to wake up early. Like Mondays, I have work at 8 a.m. So I'll be up at work from like 8 to 1, then I have workout, and then I have class 3 to 5, and then I'll have like a basketball game at 8 p.m. So after class ends at 5, I go home, and I'm leaving at like 5:45 to get to the arena at 6 for an 8 p.m. tip, and I'm going to get home around 11. So yeah, those are long, long days. But I mean, those are the days where, for me personally, I just feel like I feel so like grateful and I love those days more than the days where I have more time, just because I feel like I got everything out of my day. You know what I mean? Like there was not a moment where I was like taking time off, and that's so much fun to me. Like I love that stuff.
Now, I know you mentioned earlier the preparation that goes into what you do for your career. What is the preparation for like a basketball game? Obviously the spotting board, but what else kind of goes into it as you're sitting at either your dorm, you're sitting at home, whatever your setting is? What do you do to get ready for that basketball game or a football game that you have a week to prepare compared to a few days to prepare for your next game?
Yeah, it is definitely way nicer to have a week. And I usually call it the game a little better. Um, but for the most part, it's just like, so as soon as I know when I'm calling the game, and if I have free time, I'll put on my spotting boards like height, weight, number, player name, and then some like any articles I can find. So what I like to do is like type the person's name into Google and just scroll and see if I can find any news articles. And then if I have a chance to watch them play a game before I call them, like I'll watch that game. And that's, I think, one of the biggest advantages of having a couple days or having a week or so is like, you know who's who pretty easily versus most of the time, because it's like my third game of the week or it's the second one in 3 days. I know who's who because of the YouTube video, and then I'm like doing it again when I get to the arena versus you really know a team well if you have a couple days. So once they play their last game before the game I'm going to call, I'll put in statistics. I'll put in what they did that last game. Every team in college has game notes, which are the most incredible thing in the world. They send you like a packet full of notes on each player and storylines. So I'll look through that. The Pac-12 actually has, which we just discovered this year, notes for every football and basketball game, women's and men's basketball, that they'll send out like the morning of. So I'm always looking at those because those are amazing. And you kind of just like build in the board. I also try to put in my spotting boards like trends, or statistics like average points per game, shooting percentage, stuff like that. And then a lot of storylines, and then I'll try to memorize the players through YouTube, and then I'm ready to go. I'll write a little like 30-second open and make some note cards on like stuff I want to improve on. I'm always trying to listen to the last game I called, so I'll try to listen to that, and then write some stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not too complicated, and once like you get into the rhythm of it, it's not too bad.
Now, do you have a favorite moment, like maybe a favorite call, a favorite
Ooh.
play that you've had since you're a senior now? You've kind of gone through it. Do you
Yeah.
have that special moment or that special call that you'll never
That's a
forget?
good question. Oh man, there's so many. I don't know. I don't know if I have a moment where I'm like, Hmm. I don't know if I do. Sorry, I know that's not great, but I'd say like if I give you one to stick out, my freshman year, it was like March 3rd maybe or March 1st. We played UCLA in basketball at home. And usually the seniors of the station call the UCLA game, but for some reason they didn't do it. And they said, you guys can do it. And I called a buzzer beater game winner against UCLA as a freshman. And I think I wasn't a good call. Like, I hated the call. But that moment sticks out because it was kind of like the beginning of my USC career broadcasting games, I would say. Um, and man, to think about all the things I would see next, I mean, I've got to call 2 Pac-12 football championships, one in an empty arena and one in a full arena in Las Vegas. I've got to call 2 Pac-12 championship basketball games. I've got to call, a couple buzzer beaters versus UCLA, which are always the greatest thing ever. Yeah, I mean, I've been blessed and with opportunities to really call some fun ones. So I don't know if I have a favorite, but I think that one is probably the one that I'll never forget.
Now, looking ahead to next year after you graduate and kind of get past the college level, what are you looking to be your next step in your broadcasting career?
Yeah, man, I wish I knew. I don't have anything lined up right now, but I'd say if I like dream scenario, I'd like to be like the voice of a college. So talk like do their basketball, baseball, and football on the radio. That would be the goal. That'd be the goal.
Do you like radio better than TV broadcasting? Which one would you rather prefer?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now I enjoy radio more just because it's all I do. But TV is definitely fun, and I think you can have a little more fun on TV because you're not responsible for being the eyes of the person who's listening. But you can definitely have fun on radio. But yeah, I think right now, like, if you said you had to do one for the rest of your life, I'd choose radio.
Now, back in 2022, you were named the Jim Nance Award First Team All American, and you were one of the top 6 collegiate broadcasters in the country. What did that moment and what was that moment like for you when you kind of saw that and you got that award to be at that level of, broadcasting?
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool. I mean, it's always nice to know that you're doing the right thing. And I think like that award shows that I was like, doing some of the right things. So really, really neat. And really cool to be up, like honored with a bunch of really, really good broadcasters who like I've listened to or seen on Twitter and stuff like that. So that was really neat. It was obviously those awards are subjective. We all have our favorite broadcasters, and there's no like analytical data to tell you who's the best. But I think it was cool to see that people thought that I wasn't horrible. um, like because you never really know. Like I mean, you put on the headset and you're like, I hope this sounds good. Like I hope people like it, but who knows if they will. So that was nice.
Do you have a favorite broadcaster?
Yeah, man, another good question. I have a couple. Um, I think different broadcasters teach you different things. I think like Joe Davis's ability to punctuate the big moments is top tier. I think um, 2 guys I love on the radio, JB Long and Ryan Radke. Ryan Radke calls What Games for Westwood One. JB Long does the Rams on the radio. Those guys are terrific. Noah Eagle, who does basketball on the radio, I think he's so good and so good at like being so good and also like sounding like he's just having fun. Like oftentimes you'll listen to people and you're like, wow, this guy's really good, and you can tell they're like literally like super zoned in. But I think Noah also like has so much fun while being so good. Um, Jason Benetti is really good. I mean, there's so many. But yeah, those people come to mind. And then of course, two people I met early in my career, Jack Benjamin and Kevin Dana, who have been huge helps of mine. I really enjoy their work too.
Now, do you ever just, I know you mentioned earlier how you kind of went over your games as a broadcaster and kind of listen over. Do you like go on YouTube and type in, let's say, Jim Nance, for example, Jim Nance best calls or Jim Nance highlights from this or that? Do you usually do that just to maybe hear other broadcasters' point of views of games or their calls, kind of like get their ideas in your head a little bit also?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of most the things that's helped me the most in my broadcasting career, how if you can even call it a career, is just like listening to other people and seeing what I like and seeing what maybe is not my taste. But I'll definitely YouTube highlights. I'll definitely YouTube um, or listen in live whenever I can and just write little things down that I like, whether it's how they say, whether it's what their pacing is. And I think, doing that can be so helpful in just like expanding not only your vocabulary, but also understanding what is considered some of the best, right? Those people are on the air getting paid millions of dollars because they're considered the best. So what do the best do?
All right, everybody. That's going to do it for Carlo Jimenez. Carlo, thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget, go check out Carlo on TikTok at Carlo the Broadcaster and then on Instagram at Carlo.Jimenez. Carlo, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoy the interview, and I hope our
Of
viewers definitely get
course.
a lot out of what you explained and just how you've kind of progressed as a student broadcaster. And good luck the rest of your way. Good luck
Thank you.
for the rest of your career. Hope it all goes well. And thank you so much for doing this interview.
Of course, anytime. Thank you so much.
You got it. Enjoy your night, everybody.